Hi there. Welcome to our Chapter 23 review. I have only a few minutes, but before I need to get to a meeting, but I would love to share some thoughts with you on reviewing for Chapter 23, Imperialism chapter. So let's get underway. Time is short. I'm going to ask you that you review your reasons why America got involved in imperialism in the late 19th century. Commercial interests, trade, markets, to Christianize the Africa and Asia. We also have for military defense, for coaling stations. Alfred Thayer Mahan's book, Influence of Sea Power on History, as far as coincide with imperialism. Every nation that gains world power status has, of course, a great navy. So the buildup of our navy. Social Darwinism, belief of racial superiority over the other hemisphere, and of course the white man's burden. It is our obligation. So again, those are reasons why America decided to imperialize in the late 19th century. Plus, they saw that the European world powers as well were carving up Asian markets and African markets. One of the reasons why John Hay's open door policy was created with China, because the European nations have already established dominance in China, and the United States did not want to be cut out of any of that trade. So John Hay's open door policy, of course, allows for free trading with foreign nations in China to promote and foster trade rather than setting up barriers. Again, that was John Hay's open door policies. All trade with China open and really equal to all. But really the first area of U.S. imperialism kind of starts in 1867 with the purchase of Alaska by Seward. And then after our next big acquisition or territorial gain was Hawaii. So a couple things to keep in mind about Hawaii. We have, at the beginning, the king of Hawaii opening up the Hawaiian borders to American businessmen. And throughout the 1860s and 70s, the American businessmen like Dole set up these plantations, imported labor, and started to really understand and realize the commercial importance of Hawaii. 1880s, there was an overthrow by the Americans over the Hawaiian government. The new Queen Liliuokalani, wanted all the Americans out, and again Hawaii for Hawaiians, and wanted the American presence out, and they overthrew her. Grover Cleveland, being a good human being, did not recognize Hawaiian independence, by the Americans. They did not annex Hawaii, and so Hawaii kind of sat in control by the U.S. Businessmen that were there. They set up their own government, very much like Texas, circa 1836. And it was not until 1898 when President McKinley actually annexed Hawaii and made that part. So again, we got Hawaii in 1896, not really as a result of the Spanish-American War, but of course during that same year. Now, speaking of the Spanish-American War, obviously there's going to be quite a few questions on that. What I would definitely refresh yourself with is the cause. And bottom line, cause of that war was the American newspapers, yellow journalism. Remember, the competition between Hearst and Pulitzer. Hearst owned the Journal, and Pulitzer owned the New York World, and these are newspapers that were competing for dollars. And through their sensationalist journalism, they're the ones that got American public frothing at the mouth for intervention and to help Cuban independence. So the Spanish-American War, part of the setting is in Cuba. Cuba was a Spanish colony. Excuse me, very emotional. Brings back some tough memories. So the Spanish-American War, Cuba was a Spanish colony, and Cubans longed for independence. And through the Cuban Revolutionary Movement led by Jose Marti, they were clamoring for freedom. The Spanish government cracked down on the rebels, put them in the reconcentrados, camps to kind of isolate the rebels. And this is when the American newspapers really picked up on the stories, exaggerated, sensationalized what was going on down there, and the American public was clamoring for help by the Americans. Roosevelt was a jingoist, definitely wanted war, and he would be an imperialist. And so please go back in your notes and double check and kind of go over the study up on who would be an imperialist, who would be in favor of annexation of the Philippines and all the islands that we get from Spanish-American War, and of course who opposed it. Definitely want to go back and check that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, so President McKinley was not going to be pressured by anybody, especially by Roosevelt or the public. And I would say, as part of a peacekeeping venture, he sends in the USS Maine, battleship Maine, into Havana Harbor as sort of a here's what we're going to do. We are going to negotiate. Spain, you must give up your holding on Cuba. Well, in February of '98, of course, the Maine explodes, and the jingoists quickly cry that this is as a result of a Spanish mine. We should declare war on Spain immediately. And that, along with the Delome letter, which was a letter allegedly by a Spanish ambassador saying that Spain should not be afraid of McKinley. He's a weak, timid man. He's a pushover, and America should not be feared. Well, along with that, the Delome letter and the Maine explosion, we declare war on Spain in April of 1898. And so now America is indeed at war with the Empire of Spain. And as I said in class, when the war is declared, please do not assume that Cuba was the site of the first fighting. That was in Manila, right, which is, of course, in the Philippines. So the Filipinos were also clamoring for independence, and their leader was Emilio Aguinaldo, the Filipino patriot, and along with the U.S. forces were able to defeat Spain, and then the Philippines were under the assumption of independence. And they did not get it, and so they had to turn their attacks against the United States. So in the Philippines, the U.S. Army was fighting Spain with the Philippines, and then they're fighting the Philippines. And we did not want to give them their independence at that time. We were fearful of other European nations encroaching on the Philippines. We could use it as markets. We had the opportunity to utilize the Philippines location also for military reasons, and we were not ready to hand over the Philippines to the Filipino government. So we set up a regime, and after World War II, they finally gained their independence. But to push for the annexation of the Philippines was definitely led by the imperialists, your Mahanites, your Roosevelt, your Senators Lodge and Beveridge, and really the major factions of the Republican Party. Your anti-imperialists, of course, were your Democrats, your populists, your Gompers, your Carnegies, William Jennings Bryan. They were those ones. They were opposing imperialism for the simple fact it makes perfect sense that being a republic and being an imperialistic nation, those two worlds definitely don't collide. And it's a hypocrisy that America can say it's a republic and yet also imperialize. And as far as Cuba, the Teller Amendment said that we have really no designs to take over Cuba. We free Cuba from Spain. The Teller Amendment, like I said, said that Cubans would have their independence. After the war, the Platt Amendment is created, which gives Cuba its independence, but a lot of strings attached. They could not get They could not get involved in third-party treaties. We had the right to intervene whenever we felt that it was threatening our business interests down there, and of course we got Guantanamo Bay. With Roosevelt and Taft and Wilson, I ask that you go over your notes on their foreign policy. Remember the big stick diplomacy by Roosevelt that basically says we will have the right to intervene in any Latin American nation in the Western Hemisphere by force if we feel that our interests are threatened. Taft's dollar diplomacy, we will pour in money to Latin American nations and protect our interests when necessary from encroaching European powers. And Wilson's moral diplomacy, which of course is making the world safe for democracy, spreading democracy and human rights to Latin American countries from the encroaching European powers. And that is really kind of then our segue into in the World War I into Chapter 25, which I'll give you a Chapter 25 review later. I will end here, but I will give you a tip of looking at the clock here. I need to go, but I highly recommend kind of brushing up on your Panamanian Canal history, because there will be a few questions about the Panama Canal. All right, take care, enjoy the day. Bye-bye.